Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome back to the Climate Transformation Summit. We had a super amazing first day. Thanks for all of your energy and thanks for coming back this morning. I already saw some of you might have needed a coffee to come back into the energy level of yesterday. But keep introducing yourself again in the chat. I think that works perfectly fine. And maybe you also want to share with the others what was a moment you still remember from yesterday, like a quote or the most motivating solution that was shared. I would be super happy to read that here, and please share with the others what was your aha moment from yesterday. What was the thing that stuck out? So I'm gonna look in the chat and see if someone dares to share what was their moment from yesterday. So far, I just see a lot of coffees, which I also just had. I think that is super much needed. Anyone who can share what was their moment from yesterday that they want to share with the others and remember what stuck out. There is a quote from Paula. She said, "We act like 2030 was a magic date, but what we need is no deadline, but acting now." Yeah, I very much agree. Thank you for that, Nicole. And many aha moments from Susanne. That's also nice to hear. Inspirational talk from Paula. Great. So I'm going to look into that later again. And I'm super happy to be back. Actually, it was a longer evening as well, but I'm gonna show you later what has happened. So first of all, for everyone who might be today here for the first day, welcome to the Climate Transformation Summit. It's an online conference all about the climate community. So be welcome to be part of it. And what we have these two interactive days for is really sharing best practices for decarbonization in companies and their supply chains. And the overarching theme is making it happen, because we do see there are a lot of regulations out there. Many companies have already targets, but what we need is bringing the solutions into actions. So that is what the summit is all about, inspiring each other, sharing knowledge, how we can really take the next step. And this is a big mission that we are not fulfilling alone. We are super happy to have a lot of partners with us, but also a lot of speakers, innovators, people who are sharing in their workshops their knowledge. So there are too many to name them all, but we are super, super grateful to have them. And before we go into today's action, I quickly want to move you through what happened yesterday. And so you are on top of it if you have your first day today. So what we had was an introduction into the political framework that is right now framing everything that's happening on the market, which kind of climate actions we actually need. We heard from German Zero that they're actually lobbying 5,000 solutions to be implemented in Germany to reach that target of being climate neutral in 2035, a very ambitious goal. So they are working on the political side. Then we had a main panel where we talked about how are these political frameworks, regulations tying into climate actions in companies, and is it not maybe hindering us even? And the whole panel said there are guidelines that we have to fill with practice so that they are not just words on paper. Then we had our workshops, some of them super interactive, that is just a small picture of it. Everyone really going into brainstorming and action mode. And after that, we had our online pitches. We had a lot of visitors at the booth, conversations going, and then 2 afternoon fireside chats where we looked into what do companies really need to do, and not only the big company as such, but like more the decision makers in companies. How does it feel if now all these things are changing within your company? How do you get people on board? How do you have to maybe train skills, use different tools, such as science-based targets, but then go from there into, we had the word scenarios, and then again into actions and really reframing your business models and recreating products and services. And in the evening, as said, there were 2 events. So one was in Hamburg, online and offline. I joined there and gonna show you later what we touched on, and then the offline event in Berlin. And yeah, online it looked like this. We had in Hamburg people sitting at the river, as I saw, and yeah, we talked a lot about Scope 3 and the actual challenges actually happening there. And in the offline event in Berlin, it looked a little bit more cordial, I would say, and we had a nice sunset. So Yasha from our team was there, and that was also a very nice evening. And from that, we come to today's mission of the summit, which is, I would say, really the core and the heart of the whole summit. Because we touched yesterday on what is really the overarching theme in climate in general, it's that we have, as a global community, set the goal to become climate neutral at latest in 2050. And we see that from all climate facts, that's really what we have to go towards. It's not a goal that is set by dreams, so to say, but by planetary boundaries. And that actually the next 10, or not even 10 years now, 7 years are the crucial decade to really set the theme of staying well below 2 degrees, and it needs actions for that. And we do know that the actions we have to implement are not unknown, quite the contrary. We see that these 10 areas are the key areas where we have to implement solutions. It all starts always with renewables and divesting from fossil fuels, but then it also goes into electronic transport, retrofitting of buildings, and using natural or nature-based solutions. And it all ties in different industries, and it all ties to different companies. And what we see by that, and we had already started yesterday, always a little bit of this discussion, is that companies are not alone in taking these actions, that actually most of their emissions are in the supply chain. So if we really want to level up climate actions and management, we have to think across industries, across supply chains, and level up actions. And that is a term you're going to hear today a lot, Scope 3. I quickly already want to introduce it, so it's not totally new. We do see that emissions of a company are created, so to say, in different steps in their production, in their value chain, upstream and downstream. So before the company is actually producing its own part, and then after they are selling and shipping it out of their office, so to say. And there are 15 different categories, and the indirect ones are the ones that are upstream and downstream. So where actually the company is not really directly part of, but where their suppliers are producing and selling products and services to them, where they are shipping, where they are using others' goods. And then also after the company, when they are like really having the product going out of the production, until the customer actually end the state of recycling or landfill and so on. So all of these areas are huge, and they're all covered in Scope 3. And we're going to explore today a lot what this means, why that challenge is so huge, and why we have to look at it. And very shortly, I think all of us know already, in Scope 3, there are most of the emissions. Here you have an overview from different industries. Everything that's orange is Scope 3. You don't have to see everything, so you get the notion. It's mostly the major part. It can be up to 90% and more in different industries and different companies. And it's one key area that we cannot overlook. And we don't want to overlook it, and the pressure is on because actually the EU is also working on forbidding kind of claims. They don't want to have climate just a buzzword. We really want to have it as an actionable framework. And that is what we see nowadays, that companies are not longer just looking into their CO2 and then maybe going in climate neutral by offsetting, but really they have to show also, especially on the financial markets, so that is an overview from Financial Times, how they are managing these climate emissions. So everything that's happening also indirectly from your supply chain. You have to show how you're reducing emissions, if you actually can report on your Scope 3 emissions, and which actions you are taking to bring those down. So also science-based targets, again, is one indicator to show, are you really setting goals for your supply chain? And that is what today's summit day is all about, the second day, bringing climate management really to the next level, looking beyond your office door, going outside, integrating your stakeholders. That can be business partners and suppliers. For others, this might be also their customers. And we're going to have a lot of discussion around it, workshops, panels. And together, we really look forward to how do we create that vision of 2050 that we all want to come see true of a climate compatible economy where businesses and their supply chains really take responsibility and actions. And with that, I gonna introduce you to today. So what is coming up is, as you have seen yesterday when you were here already, the lobby where you find all the information. So the agenda is in there, the panels, workshops, online fair, everything is locked and connected and linked. So please always use the lobby to navigate, and I quickly remind you where to click. You view the schedule there. You can always just go when the session is opening up. You can go backstage or like into the session and be part of it. In the launch, you have the online fair. So we're gonna have pitches again this afternoon. And then the chance to visit people at the booth. You're going to find your challenge. Everyone is connected to some booth. So to make sure you're going to visit them and get your extra points for the leadership board. So maybe also a quick reminder for that. We're going to reward the most interactive audience member. And then on the very right, you find your messages, personal notes. You can connect to everyone and be part of that community by really networking and making sure you get the most out of it. And that's it from my side. Biggest thanks goes out to the team. So they are all in the back here to help you, especially also at the info booth. If there are any questions, we will always help it, and you can chat with them or just have a video call. So please always reach out. We want to make you feel very comfortable and guide you through everything in the best way. And then as well, thanks today for our partners being part of the sessions, supporting, organizing, and helping us to set up the whole scene. And from here, most important, thanks to every one of you being here with your triple coffee today, bringing in the energy, participating, and making climate transformation happen. And from that, you get already the first connection challenge of today. So as introduced before, you find on top actually the personal messages, and you can pick just 2 people that you find just next to it. There's also a people button. You can see who's already online this morning, and you choose 2 people to connect with them, someone whom you don't know yet, whom you haven't been writing with yesterday, and you can tell them what is your preferred climate action that you are maybe taking in your personal life already and or company. So maybe walking instead of taking the car, drinking more water than coffee, having a cold shower, I don't know. So would be nice. You're gonna share with others, and you learn which kind of climate actions others are already taking. And while you're doing that, I'm going to introduce you to actually our today's ambassador. So we had yesterday a greeting, and we're going to have one today. And I first have to stop presenting to make that happen. And then you're going to find out who it is.
And welcome to the Climate Transformation Summit. I'm Antje von Dewitz, CEO of VD Sport, and also member of the board of the Bundesverband Nachhaltige Wirtschaft, the German Sustainable Business Association. When I was a child, I wanted to find my place where I could contribute in saving the world. I did several traineeships in NGOs like women's and environmental organizations and several media and cultural stations. My last traineeship was at the company of my father at VD Sport. And I was really, really surprised what I found there. I was surprised about the level of responsibility you can overtake in your own company, in businesses. I didn't know that you can overtake so much responsibility towards the own team in creating good, trustful, rewarding working conditions, towards the customer in creating functional, high quality, sustainable products, towards production partners and their employers, their employees, in contributing to fair and environmental friendly working conditions, towards society in taking a stand and overtaking responsibility holistically. So when I overtook the company in 2009, I had the vision of fulfilling all these different levels of responsibility and of making my own children proud. They should know that we as a company and I as their mother really put in a great effort to take our stand in protecting this planet and their future. So during the last 15 years, our whole team spent a lot of time, effort, money, and nerves on transforming our complex international supply chains, our materials, our products, our chemistry. And we've come pretty far. More than 90% of our products carry the very strict sustainable label Green Shape. More than 70% of our products are already made out of recycled or bio-based materials, and so on. And at the moment, our biggest task lies in supporting our Asian producers and material suppliers to invest in energy efficiency measures and to switch to alternative energies. So we really have a lot of challenges to go on, but we've already passed a lot of challenges. My biggest learning on this way, on this journey, is it is possible to create change, even in a family-owned, middle-sized business in an international, very competitive branch. And secondly, it is ironically very tough in our economical system to overtake responsibility. And you only have a chance of doing it economically successful if you commit yourself systemically and professionally to this task. And thirdly, this is the very substance that you need to make your company fit for the future and to be regarded as a trusted and relevant partner, employer, or brand for the future. And last but not least, I think this journey of transformation is enormously rewarding, even though the challenges seem sometimes overboarding. On this way, you will find so many great allies that together you will gain so much energy, joy, and most importantly, synergies and leverage that you always find the strength and the optimism together to go on. In this spirit, I wish you a great time on the Climate Transformation Summit with many valuable insights and impulses and the joy of connecting with potential allies. All the best.
Well, I think that set the scene well for today. So hearing that, the challenges I think are everywhere the same going into supply chains, that's the biggest part. So that is what we're going to talk about today and find out the solutions or best practices that some companies and decision makers are already using. And with that, I would say you have still a little bit time to get either your third coffee or make sure that you really write to people and connect already and share your climate solution that you love to implement. And maybe you can already meet in the launch for the next 5 minutes and talk a little bit and grab your coffee with someone else. And in between, we're gonna make sure that our keynote is ready to go, and you find us in 10 minutes there. So see you in a bit, and excited for everything to come today. See you soon. So, hello and welcome back to this second keynote of the Climate Transformation Summit. In a bit, I'm super honored to introduce you to Aida, but before I get her on stage, I want to give her a very warm welcome. I'm super excited to hear from her today more about the rising pressure on the financial side on climate risk and why companies have to bring up a holistic climate management. Aida is sustainability manager at the GLS Bank in Germany. And she is in particular responsible for the internal sustainability management. In that role, she has just recently co-published a report, which I found online. She can tell me a little bit more about it, about the evolution of sustainability reporting from ESG to impact measurement, which I found super interesting. She also has extensive experience in renewable energies from her time during the competence center at GLS Bank. And she knows a lot about the impacts banks, businesses, and the markets have in potentially shaping the future. So with these words, I'm gonna invite her on stage. Aida, how are you doing? You have to, there.
Great. Good morning. Thank you, Lara, for this kind introduction.
Yeah, thank you. I was really pleased to find that report, actually. I hope I quoted everything in the right way.
Yeah, I just grabbed it from behind. I have it there just to show you. It's really great. You know, Yvonne Zwick, she's at the Climate Transformation Summit as well. So we were really honored to talk about the integrated sustainability report of GLS Bank. So that's great. It's a really great lecture from all the other people who participated as well.
Yeah, we shortly went into it, I think yesterday also with her in that panel, that you really need new indications, so to say, as companies to like manage climate and report on it, and not only report, but go into action. So I'm interested and curious to hear much more from your side on that topic. And I just want to make sure that everything works with sharing the slides. And if it does, then I'm gonna listen and hide from stage so that it's all yours.
The slides are on, I think.
Yes, perfect. It works.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here. See you again, Lara, in a few minutes. It will feel like a few minutes, I think. And hello, everyone. I hope you had a great day yesterday. I'm excited to start now, and I'll already planned with my coworker to binge watch all the panels and speakers that have already been here. So that will be exciting. Who needs Netflix? So I want to talk about the rising risk due to climate change, but I will want to leave you with more insights about opportunity, actually, and not so much about risks. Bank love to talk about risk because it's really important for them, right? They summarize all these really great companies in their own balance sheet, and therefore they see challenges really compromised. So we want to go into that, but also broaden the view. And I want to, I see some GLS Bank fans. That's so nice. I also want to give you some quality indicators for a sustainable climate management, which is really credible and authentic and successful. So it's more about these quality indicators, which I will show you, less about what GLS has done of it and with it. It's more the criteria that I really hope you will take away from this. So why are these quality indicators relevant? Because they will show us different aspects of really good climate or in general sustainability management, which you can apply to your own climate management, but also look into other climate management of your bank, for example, or other companies you work with to really challenge their approach. And first off, I want to look in the social and ecological context, which is quality indicator number 1. And I really mean science by that. So let's look at the global scale, which is happening since 1950s. It's really an explosion on socioeconomic trends and also Earth system trends. We see ocean acidification, shrimp aquaculture, fertilizer consumption, all these different aspects which are really exploding since then. You can see it. And it's really an overload and also an overstretch on these planetary systems, but also on society we have. And it's called the Great Acceleration. And it's not great in terms of super nice, but in terms of really big and frightening. And it's also the day which started the man-made activities, not the man-made activities, but mad. So that's the overall situation we are in, right? And I want to go further and introduce the donut economy. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you've not. So that will be a short introduction on how we as GLS Bank use it and why it's important. It's not only about climate change, which you can see on the top, right? It's about so many other planetary boundaries we are facing. So we have limited resources that we all know, but we also have these social foundations which are in the middle of the donut. So there we have to honor them, because otherwise the system will crumble in itself. And also we have to respect the planetary boundaries and the budgets and threshold that come with them to not overshoot the system. We just had Earth Overshoot Day, right? So within those boundaries and honoring those social foundations, we have the donut shape, which is just a simple ring. But it's called the donut for a reason, because it's combining these two approaches, the planetary boundaries as well as the social foundation. And Kate Raworth came up with it and designed it, basically. So we can really use it for the safe and just room. It's green here. And we as a society are there, but not only the society, but the economy we use and create, right? So the economy has to stay in between those boundaries as well. And we can see our different sectors GLS finances and invests in. We just put them there. So it's our design of the donut. And really look into if these different sectors are honoring these planetary boundaries and also the social foundations, which are justice, peace, and so on. So this is really the basic foundation. It's science-based because you can see the red color. This often comes from the IPCC, and they tell us, hey, are these boundaries respected or overstretched? So it's really important to look at those and also to discuss what are social foundations, what is just in terms of corporate environments, what kind of gender pay gap are you living and offering? It's all these different factors we have to discuss and talk about to put them into really our measuring and then our company steering as well. So that being said, I want to put another little aspect of the social and ecological context there for you. Maybe you've already heard it, I assume you did, but just to go over it very quick, I love that people are setting science-based targets for 2050, for example, but my first question would be, is your pathway 1.5 degree aligned? Or is it, for example, 4 degree aligned? That's an important question because there the context is important and will fill in. And so you really see how credible this target is and if it's really science-based in terms of the path to get to that net zero point. And now you will see the most complicated slide of all. It will get easier after this, trust me. It's important to see the actual impacts, which are the nominator, And the normative impacts, which are budgets, for example, the 1.5 degree budget, the CO2 budget, which lays behind this, this math, to put it in the denominator. Why? Because I cannot tell if a company that is reporting their 248,000 tons of carbon they have been emitting, if that is aligned with the 1.5 degree goal of Paris. Can you? I assume you cannot. So that is why this is so important to see this in relation to the whole global budget, which is then seen in different sectors. So we're talking about the thresholds of the planetary boundaries, but also we have to allocate them to really see if our company is in alignment with that, if the way we are working and living is really working, or if we're just looking at nice numbers and nice years we want to be net zero. And then maybe we're compensating and offsetting just to get there. So that will be the worst. So this is why my first quality indicator is social and ecological context. Yes, thank you so much, Bernd Dinkel, for putting that in the chat. You will see that in a different slide as well. That's great. Thank you so much for your help. So the second quality indicator is materiality. Why is that? Because Lara said and showed us the scope 3 emissions, right? So we can look at scope 1 and 2 and say we are net zero, but the real work lays in scope 3, right? So we have to check with double materiality. Just to make it easy what that concept is all about, we have that outside-in perspective from the company or bank, for example. You can see it on the lower side of the slide, which is the impact of the company on nature and people. That has been there for many years, and this is often used and needed in reporting standards, so GRI and other ones. But really important now is to look at the outside-in perspective as well. Oh, I just changed it, right? The inside-out perspective from the company to the environment and people as well, not only environment. And the outside-in perspective is the impact of nature and people. So this is financially material, and the other one, the inside-out one, is impact material. So this is why it's called double material. But we have to look at that the company's impact can also be financially material. Everything can be financially material. This is what climate risks and sustainability risks are all about. They are financially material to every company and every bank. So, for example, if you're a 4-degree company and your employers don't want to work with you anymore, and you won't get any of the Fridays for Future generation because that's not aligned with their values, you really have a transition risk there applying because of your own doing. So that will be financially risky for you, right? If you don't get any new employers. So floods, war, droughts, injustice, everything, this will also fill in with the outside-in perspective you see above. And now the question is, can we only, or should we only avoid risks, but can we also use this positive and active force and energy for the transformation for a livable and lovable future? You see above, on the right side, 2 options. You see war, injustice, pollution, or below, you see a pretty nice world, right? It looks sympathetic and really likable. So this materiality challenges us to look where the most leverage is we have as a company or as an individual, and to start right there. Now I want to talk about ambition and position. It's a hard change for companies and banks. There's a lot to do. But the main question is, what is your ambition and what is your position you use to face them? How do you look at this? Is it an opportunity for you, or is it just a challenge and risks you're not being able to sleep anymore because of it? So GLS Bank has always had the investments and loan principles, which are a basic framework for us to work, right? If we are getting a loan request, we can look at the different business activities and if we want to support them or not. It's pretty black and white, but also a great help and first filter for our daily activities. So this means we are declining a lot of loan and investment requests we get. We are constantly saying no to earnings which destroy the planet and its people. Sounds pretty good and pretty easy, but not a lot of banks do that. Not a lot, I can tell you. And furthermore, we wanted to know what is also needed and requested by our stakeholders. So we did a materiality analysis using the double materiality. And I want to go on about what came out of it, what we used it for. So here you see an ambition science-based target of ours. We started 2019, I think, with the target of 1.5 degree compatibility of the investment and loan portfolio, so everything a bank does, basically, and also for the operational emissions, which are basically scope 1 to scope 2 and a little bit of 3. But the main factor and the main attention I want here to bring on the investment and loan portfolio, which is just scope 3, right? So we set this target, which science-based XDC, it's the X degree compatibility, and really used that to set up a climate management. And you can see the guidelines we started to write, the measures we started to take, and also the reporting which really helped for that. For example, the TCFD. And this really helps to put an overall view on it. It brings the context factor of the 1.5 degree, so we can talk in planetary boundaries and not only in tons of carbon. It includes materiality, right? Because it's our main leverage we have as a bank. And it really brings up our ambition and position by setting this goal to 2023. And we actually accomplished the 1.5 degree compatibility with the loan portfolio for 3 years now, 3 years in a row, and also the same with the operational emissions. The investment portfolio is quite difficult, to be really honest, because it's not only because it's some different funds, right? We have to look at the climate fund, the Aktienfonds, we call it. So we have different funds. We have to go through each single one. It's much more difficult than just looking at one loan portfolio with just companies in Germany. So this is the work we are still doing because of setting this goal and this target. I want to go further to a different quality factor because we have 2 left. It's called integration. So I'm asking you, what sense does it make that companies are publishing their yearly financial report and then maybe they're already doing a sustainability report as well? So why 2 different reports? It doesn't make any sense. And we are always talking about just numbers and on the other hand, emissions. So we really have to combine, because money is really the pathway for or against those emissions. And integrated reporting on how the company cash flow did or did not contribute to a fair and safe environment is crucial here, right? So the same integration is needed beforehand in decision-making and other processes. And we are seeing different regulations aiming for exactly that, which is so nice to see. They are lacking sometimes a little bit of ambition and position, they have to look at quality indicator 3. Maybe we can tell them, or maybe some people are here, but that's the basic idea behind it is really great because it's forcing integration of these different factors. You can see it on the right hand, it's integrated reporting and new disclosure requirements. On the bottom, it's the integration on sustainability risks and the risk diversification, but also the risk management, right? So controlling has a lot of work to do now. And integrated sustainability target controlling and strategy, which I just showed you with one example. This all helps to further push integration. And the last one, I really love this one. It's so basic, but there's a great lack of it in the world, transparency. So transparency is key for credibility, right? Especially in terms of greenwashing. So this also invites, which we really love, stakeholders to remind us to stay true of our ambition and position. They are the greatest external audit you can get. So they talk about your challenges and approaches and even write about it, as I just showed you. You can see here different kinds of reportings or books or our sustainability report. You can really dive into that. And what I can also recommend is that we are publishing every corporate loan as a bank. So this is great news, but sadly other banks don't do it. So I invite everyone to do it as well. So corporate loans, you can quite easily publish them if you want. And this is crucial for the ambition and position part, right? If you want, you can do it, but most banks don't want that. So you can look what your money does if you put it on your current account. You can look what your money is doing or is not doing. And we invite you to check that list thoroughly and tell us if there's something you don't want your bank to do. And I brought a tip, but Bernd Dinkel already helped me to put that link in the chat. So that's lovely. I can really recommend the SDPI, Sustainability Development Performance Indicators, because they have a great science-based and context approach. Yes, we are applying a few of them already and working on applying more of them. So that's really about it. So it's not only about risks, it's more about the opportunity to create a livable and lovable future and to really join forces to do that. Be honest with yourself and others to just really push your ambitions so we can all have a brighter future ahead. Thank you so much. Now I'm really excited if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aida. It always takes me a little bit to come back on stage. It's like walking up here. I have to click a lot. Yeah, thanks. There is the audience virtual applause. I think that was quite a lot of knowledge and like very motivatingly shared. There are actually a lot of questions, but we also kind of have to jump to our next session. So if you are up for it, what I would invite is maybe that people write you a personal message, which is possible here on top. Or also you could make out lunch dates later and meet you in the lounge on a coffee table. So maybe that is something who sends Aida a message that you can find a time where you can speak with those people, because there are a lot. I think specifically on double materiality.
It's so hard. I was so glad I did a good job on that word.
We have to find it shortening, I guess. On scope 3, on motivating and rising awareness. So there are a lot of questions. And so my question would be, Aida, do you think there would be a possibility to meet you later at a table? Do you have time?
Yeah, I'm trying really hard, but I've already seen some people check up on LinkedIn. That's lovely as well. But I will try to get to a table. Let's do that.
So first thing is write Aida a personal message here in the tool. She is around, and then you can organize how to clarify all these questions. So thanks a lot for these insights. And I think you perfectly set the scene. I also loved you mentioned TCFD that we had yesterday also in the main panel. So like really the driving force for from the task force on non-financial disclosure around climate relevant data. And yeah, I think now in the main panel, we're going to go into what all these regulations and challenges to be transparent also mean for the supply chain. So very much invite you to see you there virtually as well. So first of all, thank you from my side for bringing the mission forward, also in an industry where you wouldn't have thought that maybe 10 years ago, and being one of the innovators bringing climate actions to the market.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a great day. I will be around.
See you then later.
Bye.
And for everyone else, we switch. Bye-bye.
Bye.
A wonderful good morning, everyone, back to our main panel of today. We have here a little bit a different setup as before. You see, I have already 5 panelists with me live and from different regions. And whom you don't see is Yvonne Jamal, who is unfortunately ill today. And we had a short phone call this morning, and she even wanted to do it still, but I think that would have been a challenge for her as well as for everyone else because, yeah, quite sick. But I'm super excited to have all my panelists here. And as I'm always the one speaking here so much, I would actually ask you to do a quick introduction, which is then more on the spontaneous side. But yeah, maybe we can go with everyone saying like one sentence in which company you are working, what's your role, and from where you are here today, because I think that's quite a nice mixture. And yeah, I would go with Sonia first. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, love to. Thank you so much for having me, Lara. My name's Sonia Bonsley. I'm Global Head of Value Chains at CDP. I've been kicking around the Scope 3 arena for the best part of 2 decades. Was even involved in what I still call the new greenhouse gas protocol, but it's so old they're refreshing it. I'm based in London and I'm very excited for the chat today.
Amazing. And I would hand it over to Kasia.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kasia Dulko-Gashina, and I'm head of sustainability for IKEA in Germany. This is where I moved in something like 2 years ago. And before that, I was head of sustainability for IKEA in Poland for almost a decade. Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having us or being with us on that panel. And yeah, then I see Mats for me also in the first row. How are you from where you're listening in? What's your role?
Great. Thank you for having me. And it's so good to be here from the sunny Stockholm. So I'm Mats Pelbeck-Sharp, head of sustainability at Group for Ericsson. So really working in the telecom and digitalization side of things. So super excited to be here and talk a little bit about what our industry is doing and what we are doing as a company.
Yeah, that will be a very exciting panel for me as well. I have been looking forward to it quite a lot. And yeah, then Leo, I also see. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Laura, and good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here today. It's so delighted to have this kind of summit. So very quickly, I'm a global procurement senior manager for Danone and all the product of Danone or Danone, depending on the country. More looking at logistics and especially air and ocean freight globally. So, of course, a very huge footprint as well.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, I'm joined with Yasha. So I think a lot of you might know him, but please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone from Berlin, also sunny today. Yeah, I'm Yasha, co-founder and CEO at The Climate Choice. Mainly work with our clients on supplier data and engagement challenges. So data collection, analysis, and yeah, really happy to be here and exchange today. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, then thanks a lot for the introduction. And yeah, today our biggest challenge or for the whole summit is actually making transformation happen, and also in scope 3. So we have heard before that this is really the area where it becomes tricky, and that not everyone maybe dares to challenge it or go into it, and some have. So I think we have some people in the panel who already did a few steps, but still the challenge is huge. And I think it's one thing to see it on statistics and like in general, but the other to hear really from the practitioners, like how do you address that? What are the challenges you have to overcome? And that's maybe where I would love to start before we go into best practices and opportunities. And yeah, on that side, I would love to start with Leo. So what are the challenges you have been addressing along the supply chain? How do you go into supply chain transformation and decarbonization?
Thank you very much for opening the floor to me. I think, to be very honest with you, it's, of course, we work for a big corporation, and even I think for 10 years one, and there is a lot of challenges today. So I will try to list them very quickly. I think from my side, first, since 2018 or 19, the first real difficulty in that journey is measuring with a reliable process what our different emissions, and that's the first one. For Danone, in example, we have a lot of different emission we measure, especially from milk with methanes or downstream transport, carbonization, and so on. So that for us has been and is still a main challenge, to be sure that the data we are recouping from our different suppliers, plus the different platform we use, plus what we track ourselves, makes sense and is consistent. That's a first real difficulty for us. Working globally on a corporation level, another real bottleneck we found is, of course, you have initiative all over the world, and sometimes it could be very hard to align on a global scale and a global initiative with the same objectives, roadmap, and so on. So, as you said in your second point that we will come, I think collaboration is definitely one of the huge enabler in that, and it's complicated, even I would not say for big companies, but for companies that work cross continentally, to be able to track all of that and to be aligned on all the objectives and roadmap, especially on the visibility. I think another one that's it's a bit less understood or less shared, especially when you work in procurement, because procurement, especially downstream or upstream for scope 3, we are managing a lot of the different flows, also for waste management. And one of the biggest is what is the targets, objectives of for 2030, becoming carbon or methane neutral, given also the fact that we're just out of the pandemic, where most of the companies, not all, of course, depending on industries, but have faced financial difficulties. And also, if you take it more granular, where the transport industry have been completely round up for 2 years, and where now we see a lot of more capacity downstream to mitigate as well. So to sum it up, sorry, in one sentence is, how do we mitigate the procurement productivity pipeline we have in the meantime with the cost that is incurred by decarbonization of scope 3 into your supply chain, because of course it has a cost. So I would say in a glance, that's the main areas I'm facing at this moment, if it makes sense.
Yeah, I totally love it. You gave me so many points that lead perfectly to my next question and next person, because you mentioned, how do you roll out a roadmap on an international scale? And also you kind of gave this procurement position, and then you have internally all these other stakeholders coming from sustainability. Yes. So maybe Mats, you would be a perfect example for an international ambition in that area, and also more coming from the sustainability side. So what are your challenges and how you're addressing it in decarbonization of supply chains?
Thank you, Laura. It is, in fact, a really good question. But just before I go into that, to put this into perspective, I mean, when we talk about scope 3, for Ericsson, currently, we have over 90% of our scope 3 downstream, so not in the supply chain. So, and that is from the energy used in our products, which is 80% electricity. So as our customers are moving and transitioning themselves in a quite a rapid pace over to renewables, then supply chain becomes more and more important. So until now, we have focused very much on energy performance, but now we are looking at the supply chain more and more, and how we can work with that. And for us, of course, it is, and we have reported on sort of scope 1, 2, and 3, and have a very good coverage of that since many years. But it has been based on generic data. It's life cycle data, generic data for aluminum, generic data for transport, so generic data for different parts of this. And now, as we are driving improvements in the supply chain and trying to change that, those improvements will not be captured if we don't go for product-specific data. So that is sort of the challenge now. How can we sort of collect the product-specific data? And then, of course, we have 24,000 suppliers, or more than 24,000 suppliers in Ericsson. But we have also done based on sort of our life cycle assessments and finding the hotspots, we have said that, okay, we know that less than 200 of them is sort of contributing with over 90% of the emissions in the supply chain. So then we can sort of focus in on sort of a number of suppliers that is manageable in a way for us to work with and collect the data from. So for us, it's really about, based on the big life cycle assessments, understanding the picture from the mine to sort of the recycling, then focusing on the hotspots, going there and working with those suppliers. And then, of course, we need to work with everybody else as well. But the focus is really to get that data from them and work directly with these suppliers. And we have had the target since now 3 years, I think, that they should have science-based targets. So that's sort of, it's a learning journey, it's a maturity journey on the supplier side to move them from sort of not having anything understanding. Some suppliers are really mature, even more than us, or more advanced than us in some senses, but many are not there yet, also of these high emitting suppliers. So then we need to move them. So starting by sort of setting the targets, then moving into being able to capture their own emissions, then being able to report it, and then we can go in and work with them on the data and the improvements. So that is our maturity journey. But the challenge is really the specific data.
Okay, that's quite a good insight. So on top of data that's leading, and then it's really the collaboration and engagement of suppliers and really training them, upskilling them, collaboration exactly. in their journey rather than a top-down process. We have Kasia as a third, I think, expert from the field, from an international company. How is a challenge for you going into supply chain decarbonization?
I would say I have a little bit different perspective than the colleagues, because I'm representing the brand and representing the general sustainability agenda that includes, of course, the whole value chain, but on the level of the country, because I represent and work for Germany. And it's because we work on the franchisee system. My job's profile and the job and task are very much different. But just to understand how we operate at IKEA, I mean, we've got the strategic plans for over 10 years, agreed among all the countries, all the stakeholders. And this is how we work, where climate is very much interconnected with social agenda and circularity, especially. So the just transition towards becoming climate positive. And from practical point of view, I would not take it as granted for myself, any grants for that of course the calculation, connection with science-based targets and all the measurements needs to be taken on the group level. And of course, it belongs to good competencies of people who take care of that and really spend years on calculation, validation, and with help of a lot of consultants probably, and people who are really dedicated to this topic. And then it comes with great tool that is super required, digital tool to countries like mine, that is like the biggest one and has really big meaning to make the transformation happen, to execute. And so that's why now we come to the points. What does it really exactly mean? If we look at the yearly emissions, around 26 million of tons, this is the value chain emissions of IKEA. 16 million tons of that is the scope 3. So of course there are tasks connected with our own operations that are already a big challenge. They are mostly connected, of course, with operations, with energy, heating, or whatever you name it. And then we've got the same similar topics and content on the supplier base. And not to say about everything, I can see, especially in the last years, the biggest progress on the other side, of course, challenges that makes sense is connected with the production, with the suppliers in countries where the production is the biggest. For IKEA world, that means mostly Poland, China, partially India. So really to focus there, to help suppliers and to support them with switching to renewable energy on site. And then in our case, when it's not possible, switching to renewable electricity. And then role of brand or the company, the group, is to support them. Of course, it usually takes years, but we can see a lot of progress here. So that will be a super practical approach, and it's super visible on then the calculation and the results connected with decarbonisation of the supply chain. But not mentioning any details on the country like Germany that is not super production driven country. We've got other free scope challenges like mobility, where of course the supply chain is also happening, a little bit different scope with this, but also everything that connects with the products and prolonging product life when it's really on in the houses of millions of households.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. We have really 3 different perspectives. So I think that shows like how complex also the challenge is, right? Scope 3 is not scope 3. It has different categories. And then the perspectives from within the companies are different, from procurement to sustainability to international level to country-based level, and like which part of you are addressing. And I think Sonia is an expert in that area, like overseeing like all these different approaches and how companies are dealing with it. What are the challenges that you see also from the work and resources CDP is doing in that area?
Thanks so much, Laura. Fascinating. I found myself nodding so much I had to stop because I was going to give myself neck ache. So everything the panelists have said very much resonates with what we're seeing at CDP. I'm going to take a quick step back and say, for anyone who's on this call and is saying, thinking, oh my God, they all sound like they're really far ahead. I haven't even started on scope 3. You're not alone. So CDP collects data from about 18,000 companies around the world every year. About 71% of them are reporting their scope 1 and 2, and under 30% are reporting their scope 3. And even with that, most are starting with business travel. But as all my learned panelists have highlighted, the massive emissions, I mean, for some companies they are downstream. Matt, I'll happily agree with you on that. But let's look at upstream. Most companies on average are 11 times that upstream. The emissions are 11 times that upstream than it is of their scope 1 and 2. So there's a phenomenal opportunity. And when you get up to the likes of retailers, you're hitting 27 times that of their operations. So it's a really big source of emissions. Here's the other. For anyone who's thinking, I need to make a business case to take action on this, I've said it for years, but I think people have only started believing me in the last 2 years. Scope 3 is getting sexy. It is. It's a really hot topic. The regulators are starting to jump on the bandwagon. The US SEC is debating it. The ESRS, very applicable to this region, has gone all out on it. ISSB won't move forward without it. Like, scope 3 is being phenomenally interesting to the stakeholders. And it's not just the regulators. We work with, I think it's in excess of 500 investors, and I've never been so popular in my life. They are really interested in Scope 3. And I'm going to come back to exactly what Matt, Leo, and Kasia, is that right? Perfect, have said. They're picking up on two fronts. One is the data. Now, the data is really interesting, and I'm going to talk a bit about what Leo and Matt's pulled out. What we've seen is those that are reporting it have started to move from a transition of just using conversion factors and output methodology. So I spend 20 million on chairs. I obviously don't spend 20 million on chairs, but 20 million times emissions factor of chairs equals. And they've started to ask their suppliers for primary data. It's still very much only the better performing companies, but I'm seeing that transition. This year, 13% of those that are reporting said they were moving towards hybrid methodologies, bringing in that primary data. If I look at pre-Paris, I think that was a changing point. It was around when SBTs launched. Pre-Paris, it was under 2%. So what we're seeing is the leadership thinking, okay, I've got to talk to my stakeholders about Scope 3. How do we make this real? How do I take what are phenomenal numbers, like 22 million. These are extraordinary numbers of emissions. So how do I make it palatable? And engaging the suppliers and bringing their emissions. So you can say it's 22 million, but it's going down because the top, like 12% of my suppliers are now 100% renewable electricity. They've zeroed out their scope of 2. 38% of my spend have SBTs, and that's where the engagement bit comes in. So Scope 3 is tying much more closely to what companies are doing to talk to their suppliers to make that story really interesting. Again, if you haven't started doing that, don't feel bad. Only 38% of companies reported to CDP last year said they were actively engaging with their suppliers on climate change. I was asked by Forbes what would be a really good target for next year, because we refresh the data every year, and I think my comms team was slightly and the journalist was slightly surprised when I was like, well, it'd be nice to know that for every company that reports, engages if the other doesn't. So I'm aiming for 50%, which actually is quite a sad fact, really. So if only 38% are engaging with their suppliers, then in excess of 60 aren't, or just under 60 actually aren't, and that needs to change. That supply, that we've got to get these conversations going. And then there's a scaling list to all the various different things that you could do that are really best practice, but I'll stop there. But from what my colleagues are talking about, it very much echoes with what we're seeing. But if you're sat there thinking, oh God, it's like 7 steps to where I'm the next Ericsson, or IKEA, don't worry, you're not alone. But do start taking those steps now, and wherever you can.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that one. I think we also had it yesterday, one sentence that stick with me from Fritz Kohler, a rather smaller sustainability company in Germany. But they said, actually, when you start doing it, you feel it's possible. And that is such a change agent, right? It feels overwhelming, but if you go into it, there might be a solution.
I was on a panel with Walmart, and they talked about CDP getting them stuck on the emissions reduction, and they likened it to high. And then there was a lot of comparisons about a gateway drug. Like, once you do a little bit, you want to do more. And it's the same with supplier engagement. Once you can see 1 or 2 of your suppliers, going from, this is a real example, and it's a quick, cheap laugh, and then I'll stop talking. But I was working with a consumer goods company about 4 or 5 years ago. And they wrote out to their suppliers saying, please, could you disclose, we want to work with you on your carbon emissions. Please, could you disclose your greenhouse gas emissions to CDP, and then all the information about how to disclose to us. And they got a reply from a not small company. Like, the contract they had with them was in excess of 20 million. So not small company. The reply went like this. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I don't think it applies to us. We don't own any greenhouses. Scary.
That's a good one.
Funny and scary at the same time. So every time you can convince someone, bring them on this bandwagon, it is a gateway drug.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe then that is a perfect one to hand over to Yasha, like hearing all these challenges. Does that sound familiar to you? We had the topic of data, we had the topic of engagement, maybe of also some companies being way far ahead and then some others, suppliers, being confused. What are the challenges you see when working with customers?
Yes, yeah, thanks a lot. So yeah, I think like I can also like add on. First of all, I had to not all the also this the whole time, because like that's the same things that we're seeing, of course, and I can just very highly agree with Sonia. It's so important to take steps, because like we're all early, we're all learning together how to address the challenge. So my perspective is I think twofold. First, I'm an entrepreneur since now 12, 13 years. I try to make climate relevant procurement decisions in my previous company and miserably failed, and then learning from CDP to that actually there are most of the emissions are coming from upstream from the upstream supply chain. It really dawned that like we need to make climate relevant procurement decisions. We need to engage our suppliers. Otherwise, climate targets are really at risk. So that was kind of like my first perspective, and now my perspective is really to work with companies, first of all with procurement teams, but also with sustainability and climate teams, to support them with their data challenges, I guess, and also providing kind of like the data that the data needs, kind of like to the different departments for decision making. And I think like what we're seeing is like very much what Leo, Mats, Kasia said already. The first of all, I think it's a stakeholder. It's very like it's a stakeholder challenge, right? In large organizations, there's so many stakeholders involved to make a decision on are we engaging our suppliers, what are the risks maybe, etc. Then also what data is needed, right? Data is such a big possible. There's so many possibilities, especially around climate and sustainability data, and then. Ideally, of course, and that's what Matt said, we want product-specific information. So there's also a lot of challenges on top of that we're seeing. So the data doesn't like most of the times it doesn't exist yet, right? There's very few companies that can provide product level data at quality and comparability that is needed. And then it's also about making sure that data can be used, right? So it's documented. You understand how was it calculated. I mean, I can tell, for example, from suppliers that we work with that, telling us, another supplier said this is the product carbon footprint of their product, and we have the same product. And if they would have calculated it the same way as we did, this result couldn't be true. So there's a lot of things going on around. I think. Like thankfully, of course, this is all getting more standardized, and there's more work on doing be done on that front. But that is a really big issue. So comparability, consistency of data, you want to track over time, right? So there's a lot of challenges around that. And then, of course, there's a lot of manual processes, I think, and that's where we also focus on at the Climate Choice, because basically we're streamlining processes, right? We want to make it easy for companies to engage thousands of suppliers and also find the right data sources. Because if there's, for example, CDP data, right? It's great. It's really can be used already from companies and should be used. And we don't want to build data silos, because suppliers also don't want to report on 20 different platforms. So I think these are some of the challenges that we see and that we're working on to solve, of course, and support companies with these streamlining of these processes. But yeah, I'll hand it over to you again, Lara, to to go to the next.
Yeah, I think what I take out of this first round of collecting challenges, that's maybe in weird way of starting the discussion, right? We always want to hear the best practices first, but I think it really gives an amazing overview of how many different topics you have to have in mind and how many different stakeholders from intern and extern in providing tools, working together, making sure the outcome is there, also having it in a data format. And that, I think, all points to the direction of collaboration. So what we get out of that first round is it doesn't stop with your own company. It doesn't stop with a person who said the fastest, I'm going to work on that challenge. It always needs your own internal team, maybe in your company, to go into it and make sure you know what you want to collect as data and with whom you need to work with and how you want to bring that sustainability strategy into action. And that's maybe where I would love to hand over to Kasia again. And in your role as sustainability manager, like, how do you make sure, or how do you proceed in that position, bringing really procurement and sustainability departments together and like enabling together actions and going in that first stop of internal collaboration? What are your actions there?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't really want to disappoint you, but I don't really think that my role has a, let's say, superpower to make things happen. What I really believe and what we try to practice, it doesn't mean that we are super perfect, but it's something that we really try for years and with some steps, is to really integrate sustainability agenda into the business. And I would name two very practical things that we do. First of all, one is that our country chiefs, country managers, for each country, are at the same time chief sustainability officer. And this has a very powerful meaning with integration of sustainability mindset and KPIs and everything that we do, or our goals, into the general agenda and everybody's job. So, I don't know, from selling, decoration, interior designers, logistics, and food, or everybody, because everybody has their appointed KPIs connected with sustainability as their job. And then there's a role, of course, for my department to monitor, to indicate, to show the path, to decide what is really sustainable, what not, what kind of choices we should do, and advisory and monitoring. And then if you look specifically about the supply chain. So of course, IKEA is a kind of brand, probably like Ericsson or many, many others, with extremely big supply chain that is split all around the world. And for many years already, we are, let's say, it's connected on the other side with cost saving and monitoring of the whole supply chain, and also impact of the brand. And we have something that it actually has a full process behind. It's the supplier code of conduct connected with the whole mechanism and system to work on environmental and social KPIs and ambitions within the value chain. We now actually celebrated already 20 years of this code of conduct, so the whole system connected, and it is very purely dedicated. It's part of the job of the procurement. So actually, I'm feeling sometimes I'm even less competent in sustainability than the procurement. So because they are really doing it on everyday basis with thousands of suppliers every day. And I believe this is, of course, it's still not done from the perspective that it's done once, and because the topic develops. And just to give you an example, of course, the topics that we have started with to really make happen is decent work conditions, or I don't know, child labor, really securing the children's rights, then the environmental aspects, and recently in the last years, animal rights that, for example, were not that impactful or needed, I don't know, 20 years ago. So I can see this develops, and we are at the moment at actually even the 6th version of the whole systematic approach, and I can see a lot of progress here. So just a conclusion, I really believe the integration and not really putting so much pressure just for sustainability, guys, because this is really the business who makes the change. Sustainability can just give you the direction and the proper definitions and the content.
That makes me have the same feeling as Sonia. I'm constantly nodding. So it's amazing to see what you said, like giving these small, what you might call small best practices, but really seeing that there is responsibility on a chief level. And you said like the country managers being in sustainability. I think that's an amazing progress that a lot of companies still have to bring in, like someone handling that topic, and then on this level. And also really seeing the power in procurement. So everything is shifting a lot, and that there's not a single person who needs to solve the whole thing, but collaboration. And I think, Mats, you were already bringing in before that you see a huge challenge in really having a program that's empowering also the suppliers. And Ericsson, as well as IKEA, is like member of the Exponential Roadmap. Maybe not everyone knows that so far. So maybe you want to explain us a little bit what this initiative is about and how you, through that, provide suppliers also a guideline and an actionable framework to be part of your climate journey.
Sure, and I mean, let us start a little bit from the beginning of the Exponential Roadmap then, because I mean, in 2018, in the climate meeting that was arranged in California by Governor Brown, the first report from the Exponential Roadmap was presented on the solutions how to sort of halve the emissions by 2030 and so on. And back to what Sonia talked about earlier, and these days there were 2%. So we felt a lot like we were preaching to the choir, because we met the same companies in all different conferences, and everybody was sort of green and nice and happy together, but really struggling. What can we do with the other 98% that are not there? So how do we get them aboard? And what we realized was that, okay, we can put requirements on our suppliers, right? But as they don't know how to solve them, we need to help them meet those requirements. So that's sort of the starting point of the 1.5 degree supply chain leaders work that is run within the Exponential Roadmap initiative. It is, in fact, leading companies working together to develop different things and then sharing that for free. So together we have, with the Race to Zero and others, created the SME Climate Hub, which is a really fantastic. And it's not only for small and medium-sized enterprises. It's for everybody that is, like Sonia talked about, are struggling how to start, where to start, what do I do, how do I even sort of understand my own footprint and scope 1 and 2, and I don't even understand anything of this. So it's a toolbox for everyone that is starting up their work. And together with CDP, we have also developed a simplified reporting tool. So it's sort of within this scope, there is a simplified tool for smaller companies to get started with also the reporting. But not only the reporting, it's also free tools for calculating your own footprint. There is the 1.5 degree playbook. So it's a guideline for getting started, for companies to get started, but also how to get started. Also what Sonia talked about earlier about how do you get started with supply chain work. Yeah, there is the supplier engagement guide, how to get started with the supplier engagement. So I think I encourage everyone to really take a look at the SME Climate Hub and go in at the 1.5 degree supply chain leaders to get this. If you're wondering and struggling with how to start, all of these things are free. And I mean, we have worked together with IKEA, it's Unilever, it's a lot of our customers, Microsoft is there, Google. So it's a lot of leading companies that work together, developing these tools and then sharing them for free, because we share the same supply chains on different levels. And as I said, you can work with 150, 200 suppliers, but you cannot work with 24,000. You have to do that sort of in an organized and structured way and all together across different leading companies. So I really encourage everybody to sort of go in and check that and also sign up to it, because then we can share the reporting and everything. So that is really what I would like to share. And then, I mean, for your own sake, then you can use tools like the Climate Choice and get that data into your own system and your own reporting. But that's the second step. I mean, working with suppliers and everything, that is really, I think, a struggle. So please do that.
I have a second question to that, because what I found super interesting is we always talk about collaborating with the suppliers, but what actually that initiative brings is, like you said, leading companies working together to do the same program. So maybe you can share a little bit on that side, because Sonia pointed out before as well, right? It can be so overwhelming, and maybe some people, or that's what I hear often from customers, I have the feeling everyone is already doing that. I'm the only one who hasn't tackled that. And then on the other hand, you see there are like leading huge companies who also, at least it looks like, have the need to collaborate on it because it's such a big topic. So what is maybe your reason to work there also across industries with other companies together in such an initiative rather than doing it alone? Well, maybe you can highlight that.
Yeah, I think that is based on the learning. I mean, two things. Talked earlier about sort of the code of conduct, and that started off way back with conflict minerals, where we started to work together on the conflict-free smelters initiative as an industry. We realized that we are not competing on putting requirements on suppliers and lifting them up. We are competing on the market. Then we can compete on sort of good designs and working with the right and strategic partnership with suppliers on products, but not on them having good working conditions, not on them meeting environmental requirements, not on them having sort of better practices when it comes to carbon footprint. That is not a competitive area. So we realized that it's much easier for suppliers if they get the same requirements from all their customers. That's also what we see. We have like 200 operators that we deliver products to, and if they come with individual questionnaires and things, that's totally overwhelming. Even if we sort of could answer all the questions, I mean, just changing them a little bit makes it super difficult. So it is much more powerful to work together on these topics. And the other part is what I said earlier. I think we realized that it's difficult. We can put the requirements, but we have to help the suppliers to meet the requirements. That's what we learned with sort of the working conditions and work hours and so on, is that it didn't happen anything. We were there auditing, and we found the same problem over and over again. But then when we started to do supplier improvement programs and getting them to understand why they should do this, then suddenly things happen. So we said, let's do it right from the start now when we go out and put the climate requirements on them. So let's help them meet that and put together the toolbox. And apparently that was very, very attractive, because we managed to get a lot of our customers joining, but also a lot of other leading companies seeing that, yeah, this is a really good initiative. So I think, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I would love to switch a little bit around, because, right, you mentioned already that this collaboration is key, and that, like, collecting the right data, and as you pointed out, right, that's what we work on. So on that one, I would also love to bring Yasha and then Sonia also into it, because you both are in that area. So maybe Yasha, what do you see when working with companies? Like, what are the collective benefits from working together there, and like bringing transparency, and why does it need collaboration in that area? What do you think in that?
Good question. I mean, like what Mats said, right? It's important to not invent your own standard. I guess that's, that's typically where companies start, right? To like, it's also a mix of things, right, that are often thrown into one bucket. So what we see, a lot of companies are, for example, really stuck or like really focused on the calculation part versus the actually taking actions on decarbonization, right? And that what Mats just mentioned, right? Starting to working with your suppliers has already an effect, and that is really, really important to start that, and especially then use standards that are already in the market, and that can maybe then provide you with relevant information, which is not then necessarily on the product level, but at least on understanding on how suppliers are managing this transition to a low carbon economy, right? And how do they manage climate internally? I think that's something I think that we see a lot. And then I think also as mentioned, climate is a very specific topic. It's the same for all companies, so this is also an advantage, right? Compliance topics are sometimes, not sometimes, but are very different in very different industries. So chemical industry needs to do something differently than maybe the textile industry, etc. So it's also the good thing about climate, that this is really something that we have agreed that it's the same for all companies, right? We have CO2 emissions to measure. We know that target setting, science-based targets, is becoming more and more popular, and striving companies to also get their suppliers to set targets. So I think this is the good part about climate, and I think it's really important to start taking action, because it has already an impact, right? If you ask your suppliers about the topic of climate, it already drives the first step of change. But yeah, want to hand over to Sonja and hear about her.
I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it. I'm just going to give a few examples. Everything Matt and Yasha said is completely true. And one of the useful things about being at CDP is you've got backstage passes to watch how it works. So to Matt's point, we worked with, I think it was about 7 or 8 auto companies. And this was before they signed SBTs, just so you know. Now, any one of those 8 would happily push each other under the bus. Right? Ford would lose no sleep if General Motors suddenly profits went down. They're fiercely competitive. But what they kept hearing from their suppliers is, what is it that you want? And what they kept, or the others are saying something different. And then they got together, and it turned out they weren't actually saying something that different, but somebody might have been playing the game there a little. But they aligned on KPIs and asked them to, they all asked their suppliers to report through CDP. And they picked out a few KPIs. Particularly one that stood out to me, it was on water, but it was a very low, it was like 5% of companies were dealing with reporting on water withdrawal. And they said, look, you may only supply one of us, you may supply 4 of us, but if you want to supply any of us, and they all want to supply all of them, this is going to be a question. And they got on a webinar and they all said it publicly. They even signed a letter, and it went up by 20% in 1 year, 20%. Which is actually quite impressive. And then the following year, it got the same sort of reaction, because sometimes it takes 2 years. But the other thing I was going to point out is it's not just buyers that can collaborate together. Any stakeholders are getting wily. And I remember this because I was on the media tour for it. The investors and the purchasers actually got together to encourage some of the biggest committers in the world to set an SBT. And this was the headline that I remember. 37 trillion pressure group tells big emitters, get on board with climate science. I'll dig out a link for people. But the investors and some of the biggest purchasers in the world said, look, we are aligning to a 1.5 future. We can't do it without you. I can't meet my SBT without you. And so they combined their pressure. And so this whole collaboration thing is gaining pace. And I think as we go forward, you're going to see much more of it, which is why it's really important to take all the action, all the steps now. I'll see if I can dig out that link.
Yeah, thank you. I really see, this point of what you said, right? All our climate targets and therefore science-based targets, if you have them already or not, we can just fulfill them together. And this is where I want to take Leo in, who was already busy answering questions. So maybe that's also the reminder for the audience. If you have questions, you can now put them to the Q&A. I try to bring in some as well. We are so good in the discussion, but I don't want to exclude you. And yeah, Leo, I think we discussed a lot now the topics of climate data and integrating suppliers on that part. But then obviously from your business model, you might have different topics as well, like biodiversity, deforestation, and so on. And who are the people, stakeholders you have to engage along the supply chain? What are the collaboration points to improve, or also best practices and aims you have?
Very good question. First of all, thanks. It's exactly what I wanted to say, and very good input from the panel as well. I just have again and again topics I want to speak about, and would not have enough time for sure. But let's be. I will try to bring here more business perspective because I'm the business, and from if you are an SEME or more a global company. So first of all, whatever your company are, your main two stakeholders you start or you go in the journey in the middle is sustainability department, definitely, and procurement. And I'm speaking scope free. I'm only speaking of scope free. If you don't have sustainability departments, the first thing to do is to find someone that get an ownership on sustainability. Because no ownership, no target, no follow-up, no roadmap, blah, blah, blah. Second of all, procurement, why? If we speak downstream, most of the time we're speaking about finished product or services that will engage physical flows that will impact environment. So two things to think about from my expertise. First of all is downstream, and thanks, Matt. You cannot go on 24,000 suppliers, but how do you do that? Of course, you have to pick your battle, like in the business. Make a Pareto, an 80-20, understand where your biggest emissions are, like the same with your spend. You are not spending 80% of your money to the same thing. So of course you will target the top ones. An example for Danone is only 3 of them on our carriers downstream, and mostly downstream will be waste management, recovery of the packaging, in example of your customers afterwards, and transport of finished product, and secondary transport to your warehousing as well. And thing. So that's the first thing. I would like to just come back a little bit on the collaboration because this is key. You won't achieve anything in sustainability without internal and external cooperation. I want to bring you further in the thinking. You can bring scope free down and improve scope free working upstream. What does it mean? That's why I'm saying you should work with your procurement department. Why? Because there is something called design to cost. Design to cost, what I'm trying to say is that is the thing that you produce upstream that will cost you downstream in emission. So you will try to think, is what we do in Danone, how would you reduce your packaging? By this nature, you will reduce the payload you need for transportation downstream. By this, you will reduce the number of transport, and by this, the number of emission. And it's just one of them. It could be the full rate filling for the trucks. Are you sure that when you are paying your trucks full, a dedicated, they are full? Or is there still space? And there is many different things that you do upstream, and people don't think about it often, that will impact your downstream. And as Matt was saying, you have, I think, a first step, which is analyzing, understanding what is your footprint downstream, and afterward, how do you optimize your own product or service model to reduce scope free? That's the first. Second one, it's my last one. Huh? Second one, very important, and that will come to the next point and to the previous point, which is what are the pain points, but also the advantages, is the distribution model. If you are scope free, one of the first things to reduce scope free emission is to redefine your distribution model. Why would you go to a 600 kilometers warehouse when you can just deliver on the port? Maybe you need to change the port, and maybe you will need bam, 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 and it's a full analysis. But even that you are tiny or big, go to your business, go to your figures, and understand how you do business. Because often the model you do business, the place you do your warehousing to redistribute your different customers or selling points, whatever, how much the production plant is close to what you need in terms of raw materials, and a lot of things like this will drastically reduce scope free. And I come back to my first point. For choosing the supplier, take your spend and your Pareto, because no need to work on a 1,000 supplier euro if you have one of 10 million and that you make a huge impact. Second, work on your distribution model and your suppliers, your commercial people, and your logistic operation to understand how can we maximize our transportation and also the reverse logistic. Danone, we have a lot of bottles, for Evian. Or Volvic. Some are plastic, some are glass, and for the glass one, we recover them most of the time. So I think that's a tremendous important. And to finish the loop with collaboration, you see that procurement, it's for me, we are a support function. So we are here in the middle to support each of the every function to make the business better. So if I can say sustainability, logistics, supply chain, I don't know how it's called in your company, and procurement would be the first one to cooperate before to go to suppliers. Last advice, organize meetings and workshops with your logistic people and so on, and your suppliers as well.
Yeah, I love the passion. I think it really shows it's a topic that has, that's why we did this huge challenge collection, right?
I forgot one. Sorry, I forgot one. Yeah, rush passion, but very important for the guys if you work with your procurement. When you choose your suppliers at the moment of the tender, put criteria of sustainability in your tenders. For us, we have a top 3 that are more than 50 millions a year for the transport, for more than 40,000 containers a year worldwide. And the criteria of sustainability is the only one that put them in the gold segmentation and the top 3.
Yeah. No, I really, really love that. We have all these different insights, like, again, from the procurement side, what are really the practical tools and to implement it and bring your suppliers on board. And I think the Q&A is actually really large. We have to see how we integrate that afterwards as well. But I'm going to show one on the screen. So we got actually for Nana the question, how do you support your suppliers? Is it with financial benefits? Is it with knowledge? Do you have concrete examples? How does it tie into like financial decisions and so on? So maybe we can use that last question, so to say, as a roundup, and you can give your best practices, like really how to support your suppliers, how to go into that. And yeah, maybe if someone wants to start on Monday with their Scope 3 program, what is it you want them to know, like how to support your suppliers to go into that? And yeah, I would start with Kasia.
Okay, directly answering to your question, it's both knowledge, sharing knowledge. Of course, it doesn't mean that the company knows it's all best, and we can never take this granted. There are a lot of suppliers who are as professional as global leaders, but sharing knowledge between and the regular meetings that takes years, but then also financials. And as an example, I can say in some parts of the world where the production is really taking place, sometimes it's very difficult to get for smaller suppliers, for example, proper access to renewable electricity. That's why we usually help with PPA agreements. So that the bunch of suppliers can meet together and for example, have agreements, have good contracts with affordable costs for energy.
Then maybe Mats, I see you are already unmuted. What are your benefits for suppliers?
I can do that. Yeah, I think it's really, in our case, we don't have a lot of financial support. No, we have strict requirements. So it's sort of, if you want to be, and it's not for the current, it's more to award new business. So then to raise the bar on awarding new business, putting new requirements. So then it's part of their sort of contract and negotiation for those contracts that we include that. So we do it through the normal business. It should be done like that. But then I think we cannot underestimate that when we lead by sustainability in changes in companies, and that is sort of in our company, but also with suppliers, instead of doing the cost saving where you sort of do incremental slicing of cost, you think differently, and then you can sort of innovate and drive things in a different way. So often there are a lot of low-hanging fruits and cost savings by being more resource efficient. Normally, the climate emissions are related to energy use, and to save your energy is also saving money. So, I mean, the low-hanging fruits, and especially if you're early on your journey, you can in fact find a lot of cost savings, find new ways of doing things, and by that, I mean, like Kasia said, helping suppliers to get access to renewable energy. Renewable energy is, in fact, if you go to the source, cheaper to produce than any other energy form. I mean, solar and wind is cheaper. So by that, you do a cost saving by moving to renewables, but because of governments and other things. So I think IKEA has a fantastic model of working with their suppliers to get on-site renewables, PPAs and other things. And doing that, then their suppliers become more cost effective and lower their costs. So there is sort of a cost benefit to that as well, to transition. So I think that is more or less how we drive it. So really helping suppliers to find the cost savings by leading by sustainability and climate and energy.
Thank you. Jascha, what are your best practices? What do you think?
Yeah, I think like to add on this, I mean, like, it's data collection is also not a one-way street. We always say, right? Like the issue is, if you want something, right, you have to give something in some kind of way because you want to collaborate. I think like it's partnerships, right, that we're thinking about. And I mean, like, I can just give the examples. I mean, like, we work a lot with benchmarking tools and providing suppliers insights and transparency on where they stand in the supplier base of companies, right? That provides also external incentive to change, and it's something that they very much appreciate because that also drives then action, right? And suppliers tell us, this is the first time I see this, and I can compare to other companies, and really they take this to their steering board and say, okay, this we must do more here, and because other companies are already ahead of us. I think this is something that will be more and more driven also by the general, I think like the general, regulatory environment, right? Climate data is becoming financial data. It's becoming more and more really, and I think like that's also how we should think about all of that topic of climate transformation. It's a big opportunity. Leo said a very good point. It's about the change and adaptation of business models. We need to change our business models to survive in the future, and that's our role as companies, right? And especially as the leaders in companies, that we need to make sure that we're adapting, and I think that is both for suppliers and for buyers, and I think we're all suppliers in some way, right? If it's consumers or B2B, it's very important.
Putting yourself in the shoes of the others, and providing then the insights, not just collecting it, but also making suppliers part of it. I think I would first go to Leo, and then Sonja. I have a special closing question, I assume. But yeah, Leo, what do you think? What helps your suppliers best? What is your best practice to give out? I think you did a long list, but what is standing on top? Where to start with?
Yeah, no, it's a topic that passionates me, and I'm a passionate of business, so it goes very well together. And I just want to make echo on what Yasha said, because it said it in a very shorter way than me. A business model. Yeah, thanks for that. It's really important. I remember every time this picture on LinkedIn when you have like those two pots for the fish, and there is one fish like jumping on the other one and saying like, if you want to get things you never get, you have to do things you never did. So you have to readapt your model, your transport, maybe revise who you work with. I think for supplier support, it's in both ways. Meaning, as you said, as customers, there is a lot of suppliers that have started a journey on their decarbonization and everything, and a lot of them not. So it's also, I would say, in the selection that first of all you will strategically and directly say, okay, according to our strategy, we want to go this far in sustainability. So do we work with people that are really like top class on sustainability in the carriers pool, or whatever carriers or transportation or warehousing, that are top in cutting edge in everything around sustainability, or do we don't need that because it has also a cost? As I was answering in a question in the chat, is like the contract. There is no really defined standard today, so you can put sustainability within your contract, which I do, but you would have every time to really fine tune it, tailor it, negotiate it with your supplier, and to answer your question, kind of support them to make them understand what is your own roadmap. I think for me, the most support I bring to the supplier is this. They will need supplier on a more support on a more transactional level to understand what are our data, what our business model, what is our footprint, of course. But the most important, strategically speaking, is to explain them where do you want to go, and what are your constraints that you cannot go above. You are a company. There is things you cannot do. So I think that's the most important, giving them, like with a team, a straight guidelines and straight objective, and supporting them through the journey.
Yeah, I think we hear that a lot, especially from SMEs, right? We touched on that as well. They are often like, everyone talks about it, but I really don't know what to do. Like, can you please, tell me where I should go and what are the next 3 steps? And Sonja, as promised, I think the biggest question in the end, and I'm always a little bit hesitating when I'm getting it, but where do you stand? I think we have this whole topic, Scope 3. It's not there just for talking about Scope 3. It's tied to climate. Where do you think we stand in that journey? Are we on a path
staying well below 2 degrees? What do you wish to see much more for that from companies? What do you think we need to do in supply chain transformation to really have it connected to our goal in creating a climate compatible economy?
I mean, I think it's not an understatement to say that Scope 3 is going to be probably one of the biggest levers to unlock climate action globally. Scope 3 and supply, what everyone here has been talking about, Danone, Ericsson, IKEA, it crosses boundaries. If you look at the COP process, it relies on country governments signing up, and sometimes they're in, and sometimes they're out. Let's look at America, in and out, in and out. What all my learner panelists have said is building climate change, particularly 1.5 thinking values into business as usual or purchasing as usual, can have massive implications. It will cross boundaries. It also shows the value of the action. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should pay premiums for whatever, but what we have seen is that companies are starting to think, well, this is my ambition. I've signed up to an SBT. I'm committed. I've done very well on Scope 1 and 2. Scope 3 is remaining a little bit tricky. I can't do that on my own. What I need to do is work with or pair up with suppliers or supply chains who replicate my values. And so here's something that we're seeing. At the moment, 11% of people that respond to CDP are integrating climate change into their purchasing processes, which is really low. Unsurprising, given only 38% engage with their suppliers, but 11%. Here's an interesting bit, just to try and end on a little bit more of a positive note. 36% plan to change that in the next 2 to 3 years. Right? They're showing they're valuing it by building it into balanced scorecards, terms of reference, codes of conduct. They're showing that everything being equal, if there is you and a competitor and you're equal on price and you're equal on everything else, but they are aligned to a 1.5 future and you're not, I'm going to work with them. It's a no-brainer for us because they represent our values. So we're seeing more of that. It's slow going a little bit at the moment. And to bring it back to the 1.5, COP took a swing at corporates for the very first time. Very weirdly, it wasn't what I was expecting out of Egypt. You know, it's all meant to be about governments. And then they came up with an expert panel finding that corporates are greenwashing, or there was concerns around it. Out of that came SBTs and holding it to the highest level. Or being a science-based target, being a very credible climate target. So making sure that you're building the highest level of climate ambition into what you're doing is also going to be important. Only 0.04% of companies reporting to CDP say they're asking their suppliers to set SBTs. And I think some of the ones that are actually on this call, interestingly enough. But this is a really big start. We've got the likes of Carrefour, BT talking about contracts over certain amounts of money, having clauses in saying you have to commit to and sign up to an SBT in a certain time frame. The White House came out with that at COP. That was their finding. They're in consultation on it. I can never remember the millions. I think it's $50 million, contracts over $50 million have to have an SBT or committed to setting one. Small, I can name them on two hands, but let's just say 10% of their suppliers adopt it, and then 10% of their suppliers adopt it. The power of supply chains from going from 10 companies to 1,000 to 10,000 through building it into business and normal is phenomenal. And I'm going to stop there. But in terms of the 1.5, I genuinely think supply chains could unlock and help resolve much action that is needed to achieve the 1.5 future. You're more powerful than you all know.
Amazing. That's, I think, a very nice closing word, unlocking the power of transformation in supply chains. Thank you so much for all of our valuable speakers here and sharing, I would say, very practical insights and like all your steps that you have been taking. Also honored, that you are transparent about challenges. And we're gonna go deeper into collaboration also this afternoon and have a very exciting panel on that. But first of all, I thank you all for being here, for kicking off the second day in the morning and giving a lot of thoughts, brain for thoughts, food of thoughts. I'm not good in that one. For the rest of the day. And I'm sure we're all going to follow how your action gonna ripple effects in climate transformation. So first of all, thanks to everyone of the panelists. And from here, I would quickly explain to everyone what is happening next so that you have the best experience from day 2 to get active. And I quickly have to share my slides. I said that before, it's always a small challenge so that I'm not clicking out of that tool. So what we have here is an extensive conversation about scope 3, how we are changing, really are having a tremendous climate impact by tackling that challenge. And unfortunately, the audience, you cannot talk so much in these sessions, but thanks a lot for all the discussion and a vivid exchange of resources in the comments. And you have now the time to get active. So in 2 minutes, we're gonna start. Everything you have to do is go out of that session here, click back to the lobby and go into the launch, and everyone who's there will be matched in a speed networking. So you can exchange on what you have been talking or hearing here. You can say maybe what's your challenge in it, if you ever have heard of Scope 3 or if you already started a program. And or you can just sit down on a table and talk to the others. Afterwards, we're gonna have the workshops you have been registering before. You can just go straight to them. If you haven't, go to the info booth to get more information. And then we see us back at 1:30 for the pitches of the solution providers and innovators. So it's time for networking. Go to the launch. If you have questions for that, you can also write at the info booth and let the networking begin, exchange and connect to others being here. See you in a bit. So, hello everyone, and welcome back for our final keynote and final session of today. As you have been noticing over the days, when you have a live event, there's always something you have to adjust. So we made sure that we have Anna here on stage, whom you see already, and I will quickly hand over to her. But before, I love to introduce her to all of you. So I'm super thrilled to have Anna from the Jane Goodall Foundation with us. I think she's live from Washington. Maybe she corrects me in a bit. And she is the executive director of the Jane Goodall Foundation, from where we had already yesterday our greeting words into the whole 2 interactive days. And Anna has a proven record of successfully building and executing complex strategies across mission-driven organizations. I think that sounds really good. So we have heard in the last days a lot about businesses, but there is also a lot in the world of NGOs and, like, as I said, mission-driven organizations. She has a profound respect for everything around philosophies and is very much lobbying the mission of Jane Goodall herself, and spreads the word and the mission across different actions, initiatives, and also here for companies. So with that in mind, I very much welcome Anna here on stage, and I hope you are very fine. Like, how are you? Now I don't hear you. We had that before. Sometimes something stops working. So let's see how we solve that again. Can you mute and unmute yourself for once? Maybe that helps. And one thought, Anna, maybe you still have the other tool or something open, like in Safari or Chrome, you were using something else. Maybe you just close everything else that you had open. So everyone, Perfect. Now we hear you.
You can hear me now. And can you see my slides?
We see your slides, you're live, you're online, and everyone hears you. So we had that before. People were jumping on and off the stage, so you did a good job. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I love technology when it works.
Amazing. Right. I love that too. So, yeah, we are very much looking forward to learn and hear from you how you are striving forward to bring climate action and yeah, many more parts, I think, biodiversity forward. So I think I'm going to leave stage. I'm here in the background. I also watch in the chat, and I will come back afterwards to close together with you.
Wonderful.
So thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you, Laura. Thank you to the entire team of Climate Choice and to all of you who are gathering here today. It is such a pleasure. It is such a privilege and an honor to have this opportunity to share some of my story, of my journey, and the work that I'm doing with my colleagues at the Jane Goodall Institute. And my hope is that I leave everyone today inspired, optimistic, and engaged, recognizing that we all have a role to play. We all can make a positive impact. And by coming together, as I know many of the conversations have been over the last couple of days here, we truly do have an opportunity to build a brighter future for our world, for our planet, and for one another. So with that, I'm going to get started here, and hopefully the technology will hold. As I shared, my name is Anna Rathman. I have the great privilege of being the executive director of the Jane Goodall Institute. And at the Jane Goodall Institute, we talk a lot about hope and action. We recognize that hope is a verb for us. Hope is something that inspires all of us to get up each day, to come together, and to spread that message of hope in action and encouraging one another to remain optimistic and come together to build a brighter future for our world. So let me tell you a little bit about my journey. I loved this image. This image here reminded me so much of what I think many of us can relate to, which is that optimism, that wonder, that curiosity of being a young person. I absolutely was, and I remain committed to being remaining curious and remaining inspired and thinking about how we can make an impact in our world. I started my career in conservation and in sustainability, working for the National Park Service in the United States. I worked at the first national park, Yellowstone National Park. I was a park ranger. And what that really impressed upon me was the complexities associated with these big causes. This was a cause around conservation, wildlife and land conservation, but it really impressed upon me the role that many stakeholders have in making these sustainable programs last for generations. And this was something where everything from big national governments to local communities had to come together in order for it to be successful. From there, I spent time at National Geographic, where I had an opportunity to travel the world and to see beyond the bounds and the boundaries of the United States of what international conservation and research and science communications, the role that can all play in our collective dialogue. I had an opportunity to see some amazing places, to experience firsthand just how fragile these ecosystems are and this beautiful planet on which we live and the creatures that inhabit it. I had the opportunity to work with extraordinary colleagues. Here I am in sub-Saharan Africa. This is actually in Botswana, working on a project called Rhinos Without Borders, looking to reintroduce and relocate rhinos into very, very delicate ecosystem in Botswana's Okavango Delta. And what this really impressed on me and what I had the great privilege of doing here was working with some absolutely inspiring and extraordinary colleagues who really devote their lives, their energies, and their legacy to ensuring that this planet that we live on maintains its biodiversity, remains in balance, and that all wildlife and humans can coexist. So really extraordinary experiences. And it was while I was working on some of these projects in Africa that I received a phone call from this woman, who many of you will recognize, Dr. Jane Goodall. Dr. Jane Goodall is a world famous scientist. She's somebody who really changed the way that we as humans view ourselves in the world. She impressed upon all of us and continues to invite us to view the world as this complex web of interconnectivity, something where she often uses the analogy of a tapestry, where these threads, when they are pulled out, begin to unweave that beautiful tapestry of life. Dr. Goodall also changed the way that we view animals. One of her most famous contributions to our dialogue, our collective dialogue, was surrounding viewing animals as individuals, viewing animals as having emotions, and viewing animals as the complex social interactions that they have. So it is an absolute pleasure to work with Dr. Goodall to continue to advance her 50 years of work through her namesake organization, working with my colleagues around the world to advance these subjects. Specifically in Africa, we have large landscape-wide conservation programs that ensure that the species, which Dr. Goodall was so famous for teaching us and researching, chimpanzees, can continue to thrive in wild settings. We also have programs working with local governments, working with young people, working through educators to build that next generation of environmentalists and stewards of our planet. One thing that we take very seriously at the Jane Goodall Institute is working with communities. Jane has always recognized that if you're going to build something that's sustainable, that has a commitment for decades and generations in the future, it's going to mean a lot of listening. It's going to mean a lot of collaboration. It's going to mean a lot of working together towards a shared goal. We do that through working with our communities that are in the environments where we have projects, and it's something that is a huge strength of the Institute and recognizes that, again, all of us has an important role to play. All of these projects are really predicated on this idea of hope, though, coming back to that initial theme, that we truly would not be able to engage in any of these projects without having hope for the future, and a brighter future at that. Hope is not something that we view as being easily attained. It's a choice to remain hopeful. It is a verb, as I said earlier. It's something that we work hard at every day, ensuring that that hope remains viable and that it is something that we can transfer to others. Dr. Goodall often talks about hope. She uses this analogy or the story of hope as being in a dark tunnel. And there's this little bit of light, a little star maybe at the end of that dark tunnel. But we don't sit in the darkness at the end of the tunnel and expect that light to come to us. We don't expect that light to grow. No. Instead, we work hard to crawl over the obstacles, to work around those tight spaces, and to bring others along with us so that we are always walking towards that light. And with each step, it is getting brighter and brighter and illuminating the possibilities for the future. One of our greatest reasons for hope, which I invite all of you to be a part of, is Roots and Shoots. Roots and Shoots is an extraordinary global program focused on young people of all ages, where they come together and through a very simple model that we can all adapt into a community-wide programs, we get inspired, we explore our communities, we take action in our communities, and we celebrate those achievements because, again, every individual matters. With that, I would love to ask Laura if she could play a short video that talks a little bit more about Roots and Shoots.
It's been an amazing journey, this life of mine. This planet has filled me with the wonder of all living. It's been an amazing journey, this life of mine. This planet has filled me with the wonder of all living things, great and small. We cannot ignore this earth that surrounds us, that feeds us, shelters us, replenishes our bodies and our souls, and stretches our imaginations, where animals, plants, air, water, all care for us. We're all interconnected, people, animals, our environment. When nature suffers, we suffer. And when nature flourishes, we all flourish. I do believe in the possibility of a world where we can live in harmony with nature, but only if every one of us does our part to make that world a reality, so that when you look back over your journey, your life, you can truly say, I did make a difference.
Thank you, Laura. That is such inspiring words from Dr. Goodall. Laura, could I ask that you play the other video too? There are two videos that I wanted to share with this audience, and if I could ask you to play the other video as well, that would be great.
It all began on Jane Goodall's front porch in Tanzania, when a group of students told her that they felt powerless, thinking about the problems around them. She encouraged them to use their voices and ideas to address the issues they saw head-on. Roots and Shoots was born. Now, Roots and Shoots is a worldwide movement of thousands of passionate young people making big impact, and it's growing. Whether it's natural disasters, homelessness, pollution, or even climate change, Roots and Shoots youth are taking on challenges and creating real positive change across the globe. Youth aren't just our future, they are our present, and they're changing the world today.
Thank you so much. Both of those videos really do a beautiful job highlighting the work of the Jane Goodall Institute and inviting all of us to be a part of it. I just want to share a quick thing that we love and we think is really beautiful. The voice, the narrator for the Roots and Shoots, that second video, is Dr. Jane Goodall's grandson. And that's something where, again, where we talk about this intergenerational opportunities to come together and work on projects and programs that affect all of us in our planet and our lives. That's one beautiful example that we have within our institute is the role of Dr. Goodall's family. So as we heard with Roots and Shoots, it is truly a global community. These are projects which give agency to everyone to be a part of. The projects look different depending on the communities and the needs of that community. They may be something where it's a beach cleanup of a school, or it may be something that's more about building a community around environmental or social issues. These are things where we are recognizing that young people have the opportunity to make changes, to embrace their future, and to be active change agents in it. Because ultimately, it is that youth and the young people who are going to be inheriting our world. One of the early stories from Roots and Shoots, the origin story of this, is something that I think we can all relate to, where Dr. Goodall 30 years ago sat down on her porch area in Tanzania with a group of young people. And those young people were expressing a sentiment of feeling lost and overwhelmed by the challenges facing our planet and their inability to change that future. And it was through those conversations and imparting to these young people that they do have a stake in their future, they can make a difference, that Roots and Shoots was born. And as that meeting was coming to a close, Dr. Goodall said to the group, well, so can we do this? And they thought for a moment, And one of the attendants there that day, that fateful day, said, yes, I think we can do it. And Dr. Goodall challenged them and said, no, no, no. It's not we can do it. Together we will do it. And that's a message that we talk a lot about within our organization, and I encourage all of us to embrace. Together we can, and together we will. Because ultimately, every individual matters. Every individual has a role to play, each one of you, and every individual makes a difference. And so as I close today, I welcome you to be a part of making that positive impact in our world through your work in sustainability, through your work in your professional lives and in your personal lives. Join us in making that positive impact for our world. So thank you to everyone. Thank you again for your time. And I would be happy to take any questions if there are any. I'll stop my screen share now and
yeah, thank you, Anna, so much. And everyone who was joining, you might have seen there was a little bit a hectic moment before. We had still some tech issues. So it's always hard, Anna, to come on stage and join in, and you don't know what's happening for us so far. So it's great you took that jump over the big lake and then also to us here in the online session. And thanks so much for presenting your work, the work of the Jane Goodall Foundation from Jane herself, and sharing with us that together we will make it happen, because that's really what the last 2 days were all about. Not just seeing the challenges, but really going into the action mode and not just discussing and wishing, but finding collaborations and bringing actions forward. So that would be actually my very concrete question also to you. And I also encourage everyone from the audience to still share questions. But yeah, how can actually companies really support your mission? Where is it that, there's a best collaboration way?
Yeah, thank you. I always love getting that question of how can more people get involved, because our goal, our mission, our work is truly global. The Jane Goodall Institute has offices in over 26 countries around the world. There are Roots and Shoots chapters and projects happening in many more than that. It is truly a global program. So wherever in the world you are, there's an opportunity to get involved. One of the things that we've seen a lot of really beautiful growth in recently was corporate partners of ours will implement Roots and Shoots activities as part of their employee engagement programs. So part of a company's sustainability goals or environmental impact goals, we can partner with those companies and actually institute Roots and Shoots as part of that, because it is such a community building, community outreach, and community impact project. So that is one way, as you're thinking about your own employers, your own companies, or anywhere else. Roots and Shoots, the model is really a beautiful way to bring people together, and as a company to encourage our employees and our team members to take action and to really be that hope in action and make a positive impact.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that's a very lovely, not only idea, but possibility to really go into impact creation with the whole team. I think we had that critical view somewhere during the last days where someone said it doesn't stop with like fair trade coffee in your kitchen and like maybe reducing plastic by ordering food, but like really seeing that we all create that action, and for sure in your business model and supply chain, but then the whole team probably builds a stronger culture all around it when they can go into that. And maybe I have also one question which I find really tricky always myself to answer. So sorry to bring it over, but we had it also in the very beginning when we opened. We had a keynote looking also into
okay, we see that the CO2 numbers are rising. It's something we can measure quite a lot, and we have a lot of attention maybe now, not so much as we would need. But then we have this twin crisis of biodiversity losses, and it's like very much combined, but it also accelerates in such a strong way. And yes, we can measure how many animals are actually dying daily and really vanishing from the planet, but it's maybe not that loud yet and not so much seen. How do you, or what are your main arguments maybe for companies or anyone in that field to combine these topics? Are they combinable, or how can we bring that topic as well forward and not be maybe too blindfolded looking at one CO2 number sometimes?
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think the way that you can combine them is to recognize that interconnectivity between all of these systems. So all of these systems, whether it's looking at CO2, whether it's looking at biodiversity loss, whether it's looking at any other kind of climate mitigation tactics, they are all interconnected. It is truly a system. And this is something where, you know, when Jane talks about that tapestry of life, that's the illustration that she uses. But what that is referring to is that all of these different levers are intertwined with one another. So how can you bridge between those conversations? How can you make sure that we are taking it from this place of an academic conversation to something where we are really reaching out to those who maybe don't have a background in that? I think that's something that we all need to be so aware of in all of our work, is that we don't just speak to one another, that we really reach beyond our own circles and the people who are well versed in these subjects, and we make our messages, we make our mission something that is attainable and understandable and attractive to those who are outside of it. So, you know, I think that's part of it too, is the messaging and reaching beyond ourselves. And I would just say we always tend to come back to that interconnectivity. You know, when you look at something that can be a very complex subject, there are ways that it always ties back to us, and it ties back to the individual. For example, one of our projects that we were talking about and thinking about in Roots and Shoots a lot centers around pollinators. So this idea that through different agricultural practices and biodiversity loss, we are losing these very critical pollinator species, whether they be honeybees or butterflies, moths, even bats. These critical species where you can say, well, you know, I don't really care if all the bees go away. I don't like being stung. And you can have people say that. But if you can tie that narrative back to them, that actually it is these pollinators that enable plants to grow, and actually that's what's feeding us as a species and all other species, suddenly you see the value of that component in this tapestry. You see the value of that thread. So if there are a way to bring these bigger subjects so that they can be more personally identifiable and internalized, I think that's always going to be a really strong way to message, communicate, and bridge between them.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think, yeah, as you say, it can be laughable to think about beans, but then, yeah, in Germany, we actually already have an issue with 2 less beans, and then the whole agriculture system being affected by it, right? It's not happening by itself. Someone is doing that job.
Exactly.
Thanks for drawing the attention to that point. I almost felt that was a lovely, inspiring last words already, but I would frame it in that way. What would you wish for decision makers and employees, people in companies, to maybe start from next week onwards? What should be an action, or what do you feel is something you would want them to take out of at least what they hear from you, but maybe in general, what's your mission or passion you want to share with everyone to get more involved?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is I would invite, challenge, encourage everyone to remain hopeful. So many of the challenges we have facing in front of us now can be very overwhelming. And this is something that we hear, quite frankly, from a lot of young people who we work with and communities of young people, is that there is this idea of eco-anxiety. That's a phrase that we often hear here in the States, is eco-anxiety. And what it relates to is this idea that these subjects are so big, they're so complex. How can I, as a single person, make any impact? And my challenge and my invitation to everyone here and to everyone who hears this is to not allow that line of thinking to govern your actions. Because as I said earlier, every individual, truly each one of us every day makes an impact. And we have the power and we have the ability to decide what that impact is. So if there is something small that you can do, if there is, I'll come back to the pollinators. If it is planting a bee or a butterfly friendly garden, that's a wonderful way to contribute and make a positive impact. If it's something larger scale that you have a relationship with and an influence with your company or with other companies, to invite groups to come together around a Roots and Shoots project where you can make a positive impact as a collective community, I encourage you to do that. And our team is very happy to help with that wherever in the world you are. We will be happy to connect you with someone locally that can support you there. And then finally, just as I said, remaining optimistic, recognizing that this beautiful planet on which we live is truly a living system, and we all have the power and opportunity to make a positive impact.
Thank you so much. Yeah, also pointing out the invitation to really connect to you and get into collaboration. So what is the best way to reach out to you personally?
Yep. Absolutely. Well, we have our website, and I would also encourage you to follow us on social media. We do quite a bit of social media postings around this, both for Roots and Shoots and for the Jane Goodall Institute. And then our websites, depending on where in the world you are, we will have specific websites for those areas, and in many cases, specifically tailored social media as well.
Okay, so I hear out you trust your team. No one needs to go directly just to you, even though you can be found. But then, yeah, maybe in Germany it's best to connect to the German Jane Goodall Foundation and to get things started there. And yeah, follow all your work. And thanks a lot for taking the time for doing the work you do. Totally honored and very much yeah, appreciated. And we got so many amazing feedback in the last days that it's yeah, such an honor that you are part of it, that you have been sharing the words from Jane. Also today in that video was already here a comment that this is such a wonderful yeah, video to share and so emotional. And so thanks really bringing that mission forward. It's not about numbers, it's not about Excel sheets, it's not only about designing business models, but it's really to have an impact on the world and all the life around us. So thanks for really highlighting that and bringing it even to the next generation that definitely yeah, needs more climate hope, I think in all that areas.
I agree.
So
well,
very much thank you, Anna.
Thank you. And I know this group will make those positive impacts. So thank you for all your work. Thank you for bringing us together. And thank you to everyone for the work that you're doing.
Thanks. Great. That were, I think, amazing final words. And I would love to take the opportunity to end with you the 2 days of the summit. And I, so to say, have a special guest for you. I would invite Alice to come on stage. I don't want to force her, but I think they might be a little bit surprised. But now that Alice is here, maybe you want to introduce yourself to the community and let us know if someone didn't speak to you, who you are.
Hi, I'm Alice. You might have came in contact with me throughout the summit as I was working behind the scene to make sure that everything could happen. So I'm really happy to have met all of you, and it was really great to have such a amazing 2 days with a lot of collaboration and a lot of inspiration also from our speakers. And yeah, I could not have expected a better turnout. So yes, thank you. And thank you, Lara, and the whole summit team. And yeah, we did, I think, a really great conference together.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Alice, for putting everything together. I think you should have had the most active award, but instead we can have maybe together a review also of what happened together today. So I think what we can take out of the last session was together we will make it happen. And that was done today by starting with a keynote, going in climate, risk and transformation, a very strong panel on climate transformation in supply chains, and again, amazing workshops. And from here, you had the chance to meet the exhibitors, so everyone working on climate solutions in like very diverse areas. And our collaboration in Scope 3 panel, where actually you voted Elizabeth as the most inspiring person. And now the final keynote from the Jane Goodall Foundation. So what I take out of it is that you got a lot of inspiration and ideas, things that you can implement in your work, hopefully, and people to connect with. So that was really our aim. And last but not least, we really thank all our partners for making our summit happen and being a strong support in each way, bringing in ideas and also creating the satellite events this year, the first time with us. So some of you we had the chance to meet in Berlin, others were online in Hamburg. So thank you very much. And I would hope you have a lovely weekend and can digest all the things you took in. And with that, I would finally close the summit and let you all maybe enjoy some sun and have a well-rested weekend and take all the passion into the next working week. And yeah, hopefully see you back again, maybe at the summit or sooner, also in person. So thank you, Alice. And I would say we go in the well-deserved weekend and see you soon again. Bye-bye.